Welcome to today's video. This is a product review of the MyEnergi Zappi version 2, which is their second generation of this charger now. If you are looking for a vehicle charger, then this is a series of videos where I'll be reviewing every single vehicle charger I can get my hands on here in the UK to ensure that you find the right charger that fits your needs. Now, this video will be aimed not only at the end user but also installers who are thinking of buying and installing these units at your house, and I want to make sure that everyone gets the best information possible. So engineers will find out what's in the box, and so will you as users to know that the engineer gives you everything that's in that box. But also I'm going to be going how the apps work, how the various features work, and especially the Zappi version 2, where how the solar export works and how it works with battery storage and other various things, because all these features are extremely important to ensure that you pick the right charger from day one, because the last thing you're going to do is rip one of these expensive chargers out a couple of years later because it doesn't fit your needs or doesn't do the things you want. If you're looking to find a charge installer near you, go to rightcharge.co.uk/evnick and they'll find a local installer for you to install a charger just like this. Before we get to unboxing the unit, let's talk about some of the key features. First of all, it's available in two standard colours, white and black. However, you can, if you are ordering lots of these, have a different faceplate cover on here if you wished. They also do a single phase and a three phase unit, so you can have, this is a single phase, but if you're in a business premises or in Europe, you can have a three phase unit. It's capable of doing solar straight out the box. It comes with one CT clamp, but if you are going to do solar, I recommend that you have a minimum of two CT clamps to take advantage of all the features that the Zappi does. And if you have battery storage as well, I'd buy you buy two additional CT clamps because you get the one with it. It's also available to do pen fault straight out the box. No additional earth rods needed, no additional equipment needed, and it is got a reputation for being one of the safest pen fault systems going, and they were first to implement this system and patent it, so no one can copy what they've done on it, which is very, very, very clever. Now, we've got a few more boxes compared to other charge companies, and that's because Zappi contains a bit more interesting technology. So first of all, here what we've got is a CT clamp. This is an additional CT clamp compared to what there's one provided in the box. The reason I've got two is I'll be demonstrating what else the Zappi can do, like solar diversion, how it can deal with various sort of changes in demand. It's a unique charge point when it deals with solar. It's regarded, if you've got solar, as the charge point to have. It's one of the best at dealing with solar out of all the other companies, in my personal opinion. So that is one extra CT clamp. What we have in here is what makes the Zappi smart. This is a Zappi hub. Now, you've got on here all the serial numbers and details on there and how to set the hub up. A Cat 5 cable that connects to your router. So this part is the part that connects to your router, and this little hub, this little modem if you like, talks to your Zappi by radio signal. So it means that your Zappi doesn't have to have Wi-Fi where it's going. It means you'd have to take a Ethernet cable to where your Zappi is if it's at the end of your garage. It should radio transmit from your house to where it's going pretty easily. And then obviously in there you've got a charging cable block for making this actually work. Now, there's a reason why the hub for Zappi is separate compared to it being built into the actual Zappi unit, and that's because Zappi has a family of products that work with it. So they also have an eddy, which can do basically heat diversion, and then they have some other products that go with, with basically solar stuff, so they can all talk to each other remotely. Now here you've got a template again for basically drilling where the Zappi holes are going, working out where you're pulling in the power, and basically just makes an engineer easier, because you can just take this template off, put it on a wall, and you can do it without holding a really heavy, expensive charge point and dropping it by mistake. So that's all that in there. And then what we have here is we've got the quick install guide for the installer. We've got an operating and an installation manual for the installer here, and then we have a faceplate. These are available in different colours, and then this is the actual unit. Let's get this unit out and this box out of the way because it's very annoying and cumbersome. So in the box we got another CT clamp, we got the actual Zappi unit, and obviously that's not the finished product. The face goes on the front of that, which I just took out before, and we also got a box well, a bag full of all the various screw bits you need. So we've got some screws, some raw plugs and some washers. Now as I get to the last screw, it's about time I mention this massive elephant in the room, which is there is many screws, which can be a bit of a pain to undo and redo the cover, especially if you're an installer and having to check for faults. So they could probably do with redesigning this into a toolless manner, and that's probably one of my few sort of disadvantages with it. And then the other disadvantage is be very careful when removing this cover, because all the cables, as you can see here, are connected. So you can see this bit here for the Type 2 plug, which is on the front here, and also if it was a tethered unit, it would have the cable built in. This bit here is connected, and the ribbon cable here should be disconnected when it comes from the factory, but just be careful that when you are opening it, it is disconnected, because you don't want to snag this ribbon cable. Now this is one of my major pet hates with the Zappi, which is that the front unit here and this ribbon cable are connected to the screen in the manner they are, because this wire is always going to be dangling when installing this back cover. So some of the other charge points I've been reviewing and demoing allow you to fix the back plate here and all the electronics, all the electrics, all the services onto the unit, and then connect the front panel with a type, different types of connections, very similar to the way they've done the ribbon cable. And that way you're not having any extra stress on the cables when installing. And I do prefer that method, and I do wish that MyEnergi would look at redesigning it in that manner. But they don't, so it works and it's fine, and it's regarded as one of the best units for, like I said, solar. And the reason is, you can see here we've got 3 CT clamps. So you've got CT1, CT2 and CT3. And you can do the CT clamps in the manner which I'll be showing you in a minute, using the cables and some Cat5s to extend it, or using the Zappi aerial system, which talks to the hub. You can also have wireless CT clamps, which opens you up to even more possibilities. This unit, just a salt packet here by the way, just for stopping moisture, you can take that out. This unit here is massively redesigned. Every time I've reopened a Zappi, they carry on innovating, and that is because they're a bit like, if you say, Tesla. Instead of just coming out with a new model, a new front, a new thing every time they make changes, they're constantly making electronical changes in here, improving and making things better. And again, they're using really good quality components. There's Panasonic components in here and various other bits, but a lot of it is designed in-house by MyEnergi. So again, this is very famously one of the first charge points that came out that didn't require an earth rod because of the way they do disconnections. Zappi also in their literature claim that theirs is the safest charge point based on the way they do disconnection, and they can detect faults because they're able to detect certain way of imbalances. And I don't want to go into too much in this video because it's quite complicated. Just a couple of other little points just to note here. There's an eSense chip here which can be used for if you've got like Eco 7, an old Eco 7 meter. You can use that to program the Eco 7 system. There's also your live one, your neutral and your earth. This is obviously available in a three-phase system, which I've got at work. There's a video of me having that installed. Again, they've gone for screw terminals, and there is a list on how many Newton torques you need to screw these up so they're not over tightened. Again, I don't really like these old screw terminals. I prefer if they had Wago blocks, and I do hope that Zappi will install Wago blocks in a future iteration of this. I'm sure they will, because they're, like I said, this box here, this in here is constantly improving. It does beg to question though, there's quite a lot of spare space. I mean, bear in mind this goes there. There is quite a lot of spare space in here, so it does bear in mind if they're going to redesign this and make it a smaller unit in the future, because like I said, they've really compacted it down. So I reckon there's a smaller unit coming off Zappi maybe in the future, because it looks like they're going that way with the way the circuitry's done. But the screen here is for that ribbon cable there, and that does all the smart stuff. So if your screen hasn't come on when you've installed it, it's because you've not put that on. There's also a locking pin on the lock pin, which some charge points now don't include, so that will actually lock the Type 2 into your charger. So there's an extra safety element there, and there's also an extra fact that no one can nick your charger if you're even on a Type 1 car like a Leaf. Lots of circuitry, lots of Lots of CT clamps on the way of doing it, but the smartness of the Zappi is built into the way it uses these CT clamps. Now, if you're an engineer installing one of these, you will be very happy. There is ample room in the back of this unit for pulling in extra cables and CT clamps, so you're not going to find it too cramped in the back of there, which is fantastic. This is a untethered unit, so like I said in the unboxing, you've got the weight of this plug basically dangling on the wires. Now, if it was a tethered unit, the wires are fitted at the back and you just have to plug in the little screen at the front, so only issue there. The CT clamps are on screw terminals, so there's no crimping tools needed or punch down tools. You basically just screw them in. And now I've extended mine using Cat 6 cable. So I've Wago block terminated them on the consumer unit side, but basically where all the power comes in near the meter. Now, I haven't got solar, but I will be demonstrating solar in this by faking solar. So I have two CT clamps, one on my fake solar, which I'll explain later on in the video, and number two on the house supply, the garage supply unit here, which will be simulating my house. Now, if you're worried about installing CT clamps on a large property or a long distance run of Cat 6 cable, or it's just an awkward position where you can't get Cat 6, Zappi do make a wireless CT product. So they make a product where you can just clamp the CT clamp wherever the cable is, and it will self-power from the conductiveness of that live cable. So there is no need for external power. It's wireless and uses the Zappi radio communication to talk to the Zappi. So if you have a really complicated install, or you're going to need more than 3 CT clamps, the wireless system that they do called the Harvi is the way you have to do that. Other settings you'll have to set up in Engineer is pairing the hub with the Zappi. Simple process, go in the advanced settings, press pair, hold a button on the hub, it's paired, it's done. The other setting you'll have to set up is the CT clamps. So you have to say which CT is for what. Now, there is a specified order in the manual on which way they should be wired, but if you've done them the wrong way by mistake, you can just literally go in the settings and say CT clamp does the main house, main fuse, which can also be used for dynamic load balancing, fuse protection on there as well. There's a second option where you can set it for solar export, battery export, and solar and battery export if it's one CT clamp for both. Now, there's a reason why they've specified battery as well, and it's very, very clever why they specified it, which we'll explain as we go and demonstrate those products later on in the video. Now, this unit itself does not have Wi-Fi in it. It does not have an Ethernet connection. It talks to the hub that we just mentioned before that's connected to the Ethernet connection on your router. And because it's a dedicated network, radio signal network, there is less interference than Wi-Fi. However, I would like to see them make a hub that can be supported by Wi-Fi. So if you could plug it into an unusual part of your house, if the hub and your router are not located anywhere near the Zappi and the radio signal's a bit too far, or if they'd made a power over Ethernet version, so you could just run a cable basically somewhere in the customer's loft space and it be powered completely with power over Ethernet, open the loft space. Any of these ideas would be great, but the reason why they haven't made Wi-Fi on the unit is not just because you can plug this radio unit further away from where the install is, but it's so it can talk to the rest of the MyEnergi family. It'll talk to the Harvi, it'll talk to the Eddy. They all talk to each other using this radio signal, and having a family of products that can have their own communication products means that they're not going to all get confused and get basically lost connections. They are on the dedicated network of their own, basically their own Wi-Fi network, if you like, but it's not Wi-Fi, talking to each other, so all these products can exchange information. For example, their other product, which is the Eddy, is a solar diversion system, and it can pick up on the CT clamps that are plugged into the Zappi, the Harvi, and know when to use your solar energy to heat your hot water and other various things you can do with them. Now, the MyEnergi engineers on the app have done a cracking job of the design. They've obviously took some inspiration from the Tesla Powerwall app because it looks very, very similar, but slightly different for legal reasons. But it's a different app, but it's very, very well put together, and it is a bit memorizing watching the solar generation and the way the lines all flow. It's a lovely app. They've done a very, very good job, but it has some huge flaws. One of the huge flaws is some of the things that you can't do in the app, which I'll go into later on in the video. But one of the major things it can't do is you can't do a firmware update of this. via the app. You have to do what I like to call the Zappi rain dance, where you hold down a button on the Zappi Hub to make it download the firmware, and then you have to come out to the Zappi, which might be in the rain or the cold, and then do a performance update on here to download the information from the hub onto this, and then after it's all done it will restart and the hub update's finished. But it just seems not very user-friendly and a bit clunky to me. The other problem, you can't downgrade the firmware. So if they release a piece of firmware with a bug in it, you have to wait for a newer version. And that's just the way they've coded it. They haven't coded it so it can go back. And I do feel that they should add both that to the app and also the fact that you could downgrade firmware if they had an issue with it. Now the CT clamp in this can obviously be used for fuse protection. Everyone who sells CT clamps uses it for protection. But MyEnergi were first on what we call solar. And because they were first on solar, they have a jump and some technology leads above other companies because they were doing solar on hot water systems and then obviously EV chargers before anyone else. So they have a huge advantage on this. And that's why this has got 3 CT clamps. We got 1 CT clamp on this that just is looking after our house system. So it sees what the house is using, what the house is basically consuming. So you can use it as a backup electricity meter. You've also got one of these CT clamps on my test rig faking solar. So I've got a test rig set up to pretend I've got solar. Now at the moment I've got it to charge only from solar. So you can see it's red and it's saying waiting for surplus power. We're not generating any fake solar on my system at the moment, so we are not charging the car. But if I leave the camera pointed here and I go and turn my fake solar on, you'll suddenly see this light turn green and the car charge. So one moment please. And as you can see, if by magic, we are now charging from excess solar. So if I look on the system here, I'm producing 1.9 kilowatts of solar, and the car is basically matching that because the house is using nothing. Now what's really, really clever about the Zappi system is if I turn on and change supplies on my house and increase those loads, and it won't match the solar, it will drop down the charging speed of the car. So if they say the car, say we're producing 4 kilowatts of solar, and the house boils a kettle or turns the oven on, and that drops down to 2 kilowatts of basically excess solar that would normally be exhausted, the car will then drop down the charging rate to that 2 kilowatts. And then if the house used all the solar, it would pause the charging on the car until all the house loads have come off. Now, this is one of the best ways of dealing with solar. It means that you never export and you're always using all your available solar, but it also means that it's managing your house as well. Now, we mentioned that it's got 3 CT clamps, and where this comes in useful is say you had a battery storage system, and I don't have enough rigs to demonstrate battery as well. But if you had a battery as well, you'd have a CT clip on your battery, one on your generation and one on your main grid supply. And with all these clamps, it would make sure that you don't drain your battery, because what could happen if you don't have all these CT clamps, especially if you had battery storage, is if you charging your car with a Zappi or another charger that does solar diversion and it didn't see the power leaving the battery, it wouldn't know you were draining your battery. The Zappi, because you can tell it in its menus what each CT clamp's attached to, it knows that when the battery starts exporting and you don't want to drain the battery, it will stop the charging on your car. So most electric cars today can happily deal with the pause command. The only car that currently can't do it at the time of making this video is the Volkswagen ID, but that is not MyEnergi's fault. That is Volkswagen's fault for not programming the car correctly in their system. So hopefully VW ID owners will soon be able to pause their charge on Zappi Solar, and that would affect any company system that deals with pausing solar, not just MyEnergi. So that's not their fault, and it clearly isn't their fault because it works on every single other car. Now the MyEnergi system also works with tariffs like Octopus Go and Octopus Agile, or any other smart tariff. Now the reason I want to say Agile more importantly than Go or other tariffs is Agile is a tricky one for any energy company to deal with, because it's not just set hours that they can just pre-program in their system and leave alone. Agile prices change every day. on half-an-hour periods non-stop. So they really have to have someone who's coded the API properly and knows how it works. And this at the moment is the only charger for sale that can deal with solar and dynamic pricing of a company like Octopus Agile. However, there is some issues on the way they work with Octopus Agile. And I'll give you the first example of the issue. The only way of setting the price target on this system, the Zappi system, is by going to the website of MyEnergi and setting you don't want to charge above 2 pence per kilowatt hour. And the unit will happily do that. Now, the problem with Agile is there may be no periods of below 2p that day. It might be prices are all above 3.5p. They're all about 3.5p. You still want to charge, so you have to go back on the website and change the price. Okay, yes, you have to go on the website and change the price, and yes, you can do it. But the way I'd like to do it, and I imagine the most of pretty much every single customer in the world likes to do it, is to go on their mobile app for MyEnergi and change it. But you can't, because half the settings of the Zappi cannot be changed in the app. You can't change the Octopus price targets. You can't change some of the settings in the menus. You can't do firmware updates on it through the app. The app and the website are not connected in the way they're working, and they should. Surely everything you can access in the app should be accessed on the website and vice versa. And to be honest, apart from specific engineer settings, anything you can access in the Zappi menus on here, you should be able to use on the app. But the Zappi Agile issues for me don't stop there. I have a Zappi at work, and why I've been testing this unit, in fact, why I've had this unit, the Zappi servers have gone down. And I know from my work system that Zappi servers have gone down a few times on that as well. And there's been various issues. Sometimes they've been out of MyEnergi's control. Sometimes they've blamed BT fiber networks in the area, and sometimes it's just been sporadic other server issues. But the problem is they go down, and to me it looks a fairly common occurrence. It's happened a few times that I've seen as a customer at work with one of these, and it's happened while I had one of these units on demo. So it's happened a couple of times. The servers have gone down, and if the servers go down, you won't get your Agile price target set by the system, and therefore it won't respond by Agile. Now, there's a couple of ways they could mitigate this in the back office. First of all, get a better place to host their servers, and second of all, they could use like a CP, I can't think they're called CPC systems, where it will default to a separate server farm location in another location, so maybe even somewhere else in the world, maybe not the UK, somewhere else in Europe, and they could switch it basically depending on which server is working, which server farm is working. So they can do that in their back office, and I really do hope they do. They've got the brains there to do it. So that's, and the app issue are my two main issues on why it's slightly annoying and not my favourite use for Agile. But if you're having solar and Agile, this is actually the only solution at the moment, like I said. In summary, if you're thinking of or have solar at the moment, it's pretty much a no-brainer charge point for people with solar, and especially if you're having a battery as well and you want to monitor all the CT information from each CT clamp. You know exactly what you're producing in solar, exactly what you've exported from your battery, exactly what you've imported from the grid. Some of the other systems that deal with solar can't get all this information. They just basically stop export. Zappi can deal with all them, and it stops you from draining a battery storage unit because of the additional CT clamps. It also has the ability of having wireless CT clamps, which I think is just amazing. The issues that really let it down for me are the screws on the front. There's way too many of them, and I've actually found out they should be torque tightened, and most engineers won't do that, and that is a big issue for warranty claims, not only for Zappi but also let down for the customers. I also think for this price point it should have Wago style terminals for the electrical connections in the back, which it doesn't, so another huge letdown. It is obviously have a family of solar working devices. So if you have solar and you're wanting a hot water system tank as well, they do a system that can deal with them as well. So it's really worth looking into them as well. The main thing to remember, UK built company, UK built charger. If you're thinking of getting one of these installed, check out rightcharge.co.uk/EVNIC, and they'll help find a local installer to install a charger just like this for you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.